Alright, welcome to my presentation on in-depth interviews. What are they? In-depth interviews are a particular kind of conversation and are probably the most common source of qualitative data for health researchers. It's the most widely used method in producing data in qualitative health research. It ranges from informal interviews to structured interviews. However, most fall in the middle and can be called semi-structured, in-depth, and narrative. Let's go over some. So semi-structured is where the researcher sets the agenda in terms of the topics covered, but interviewees' responses determine the kinds of information produced about those topics and the relative importance of each of them. In-depth is one that allows the interviewee enough time to develop their own accounts of the issues that are important to them. Narrative. Researchers' aim is to facilitate the interviewee in telling their story. There has been an increasing interest in narrative in health research, both in terms of the stories people tell about their health and illness, and as an analytic device to make sense of the data as a narrative. So, time to name that interview. Case Study 8.2. An example of framework analysis from a study of how women discuss pregnancy planning and intention. Topics include when they became pregnant, their contraceptive use, feelings about being pregnant, and decisions about pregnancy. They did an analysis to gather what they needed. 4 steps. The answer is in-depth, because it's what the interviewers wanted from the interviewees to take into account what they want. Name this interview. Case Study 9.1. Using elements of the constant comparative method in a study of living with glaucoma. Explore the experiences of people who have been diagnosed with glaucoma, an eye disease characterized by a gradual loss of visual acuity. They asked interviewees to tell the story of how they first noticed eye problems, how they came to be referred for treatment, and what impact the symptoms and treatment regimens had on their everyday lives. This type of interview is a narrative because they are telling a story in account of another person's words. Let's talk more about in-depth interviews. They're distinctive and often frustrating, and the interviewer wants to probe the responses people give. They're not testing the respondents, but exploring them to gather a theoretical understanding of the underlying structures of beliefs. Language is an important factor as it's the first form of data and it's also a method. Criticism is that they may only give insight to what people say and not what they do. In summary, qualitative research interview is a particular kind of social interaction which is recognized in most Western settings, but may be less familiar in other settings. Qualitative research requires reflexivity about how the setting and social characteristics of the interviewer will affect the data produced.